Hello and welcome to the Freeze Podcast, the podcast about hip-hop chatter. Yes, that's right, I'm back at it once again, and today we're going to be talking about ScHoolboy Q and his recent release after a 5-year hiatus, the album known as Blue Lips. This comes 5 years off of his hiatus from Crash Talk, which was pretty much deemed a critical failure. It was a much hyped up album that was a severe letdown and kind of in a way preempted the tumultuous kind of era of TDE, with SZA being in album limbo for so many years. She finally released this past year, and now we have ScHoolboy's latest release now after Kendrick leaving the label, and ScHoolboy now being the, probably the biggest artist on TDE. So we're going to talk about it as well as a few other news items. But before we get into it, play my goddamn intro.
The Freeze
Podcast.
The Freeze
Podcast.
The Freeze Podcast.
Once again, it's The Freeze, the podcast about hip-hop chatter. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the video if you'd like to see more content, particularly The Freeze Podcast on YouTube. YouTube, I from what I understand, is trying to push out more podcast content. So if this is something you enjoyed, please go check out the other episodes and support the content. And yeah, it is much appreciated. Shout out to No Caps Betting, who commented on the last video. I do appreciate, the love for coming back to the podcast. And yeah, go check out Plusmo and the No Caps Betting podcast if you haven't already. So again, thank you. We've actually had Plusmo on as a former guest, which you can check out on our archives at deepfreezechillin.com. I believe it was around episode 45 to like 48. So you can dig around there and find that somewhere. So yeah. I'm basically going to talk for the majority of the podcast about Blue Lips and my initial thoughts. So I haven't listened to too much of the album. I've now at this point probably listened to it about 2 to 3 times, I would say. So yeah, my opinion hasn't changed from first listen, really. And okay, these are my thoughts, right? So I will say the production on the album is amazing, which, it's a TDE project, so you can't really, you should expect nothing less from TDE, right? Like, TDE has some of the best sound mixing in the game, right? Like, if you listen to SZA's projects, you could tell that there's a lot of love on the production there, for example, right? Kendrick, To Pimp a Butterfly album, as much of a poet as Kendrick Lamar is, and he is a poet, he's a Pulitzer Prize winning lyricist, the production and the choices made in the production, I would say, also give that album it gives it its due, right? So I do think Kendrick is the creative driving force behind that project, and a lot of the production choices were perhaps influenced by his overall vision. So I'm not trying to take away from Kendrick. I'm just saying. And this album, again, the production choices, in my opinion, are kind of almost what makes the album. However, with ScHoolboy, I don't know if it's as deliberate of a choice as it is with Kendrick, right? Because when I hear Wesley's Theory and how that ties to P-Funk and George Clinton, I don't see the same connection of ScHoolboy picking a random jazz sample and choosing to rap over it. But maybe it's because I'm not as versed in music production and sampling, so maybe there is, maybe I'm wrong, right? I can be wrong, but I do think that the production on this album carries this album. It elevates this album, but it elevates the album to a higher pedigree than maybe it would be on another label. And maybe that's not fair to Q, but on the other hand, we've been waiting 5 years for this project, right? So I'm going to, compare it to his best work, which to me is no question, without a doubt, Blank Face. And a lot of people are comparing this album to Blank Face, which I do not think is a good comparison, because Blank Face was his career high. You got songs like, John Muir and the track Blank Face, Groovy Tony. To me, he was doing incredible stuff on that project. Like, that is definitive ScHoolboy. But when I think of Blank Face in that moment in time and how it was such a career highlight, I mean, damn, I'm actually looking at the track list on my Spotify right now, and I liked every single track off of that album. Big Body, Never Change, Black Thoughts, Blank Face, Tukey Knows Too, right? That part. Know You're Wrong. Like, that album was great. It was fantastic. And another thing about this album, about Blank Face, in comparison, okay, is the features. Because you have top of the line features on Blank Face. Whereas Blue Lips, you have a bunch of mostly no names on that project, right? You do have Freddie Gibbs, you do have Absol on the project, but you have Skywalker, who I assume is a TDE artist, who, maybe I haven't given him a fair chance. Lance Skywalker is a singer and rapper who I believe is signed to TDE. He is signed to Top Dog Entertainment. That's right. And you have, what was it? Some other features on the project. Like Rico Nasty I've heard of, but I don't think Rico Nasty's a great feature. Devin Malik, AZ Chic. You know what I mean? Like, Devin Malik actually appears twice, and then there's other artist named Jazzy and Childish Major. And Childish Major I've heard of before, but I'm not too acquainted. So yeah, as it stands, for me personally, I do like this album much better than Crash Talk. I think it is a better album. I do think it is maybe in his A tier of albums, in A tier in his discography, but it's not an S tier album, and that's sort of my problem. Because with 5-year hiatus, you should be pulling off an S tier project, and some people do think it's an S tier project, but I'm not there with them, because in my opinion, this is recency bias, right? A lot of people, when they hear something new and great, or really good, they think, oh, this is his best project yet. And a lot of artists will say their latest project is their best project, which, only time will tell. Lots of albums get a whole bunch of love when they come out, and then after a while, people notice, oh, they're not playing this as much as they used to, right? Where it's like with Blank Face, right? You could go back to that album right now and listen to so many of those tracks and be like, yo, that was an experience. That was dope. So Blue Lips, to me, isn't quite there, right? So Blue Lips, again, for me, the production is carrying the project. Whereas the rapping and performance. So let me talk a bit about the tracks that I do like, because, I guess I'm sounding a bit like a hater. So the tracks I particularly like, which I would say is kind of universally loved, right? Thank God for Me and Blue Slides. Those two tracks, and Blue Slides goes in from Thank God for Me. Those are two great back-to-back tracks. Thank God for Me is awesome. It's very hype. And Blue Slides is a great introspective track, a very personal track, where ScHoolboy talks about the, being affected by the death of his close friend, Mac Miller. And yeah, I think it is a personal highlight, or I think it is a highlight on the project, right? Because, and so Much Ado has sort of been written or is kind of prompted by this album. And this is the other reason I wanted to talk about this, because OKPlayer.com put out an article. Is ScHoolboy Q's Blue Lips the most important album of his career? Top Dog Entertainment rapper ScHoolboy Q is fast approaching the release of Blue Lips, an album that could elevate him and the label following Kendrick Lamar's recent exit. And this is written by Robbie Seabrook III. So, he is now far and away the most popular rapper in TDE. I would say this is true, right? The other popular rapper being Ab-Soul, but Ab-Soul has had so many mixed projects, lukewarm releases, right? When he, like, the difference between, Ab-Soul now and when he released Control Systems is night and day, right? So we're going to have to wait and see what Ab-Soul does. Isaiah Rashad, I guess, too, but I mean, me personally, I think after the Suns tirade, I was personally out. So in J-Rock, he's, J-Rock's steadily climbing. He's doing his thing, but he's just not as much of a character, if you will, on the TDE roster. At least that's my opinion. Okay, so this article says ScHoolboy Q operates in a very specific space. He's the one with platinum and gold albums and huge hit singles, which is correct. That's objectively correct. In addition to that, he is one of the 4 core rappers instrumental to TDE's rise, alongside Ab-Soul, J-Rock, and Kendrick Lamar, Black Hippie. The reception of Blue Lips, both critically and commercially, will dictate the direction of TDE and both how the label is perceived and how they transition from their original lineup to their new era. Blue Lips is a major moment within the TDE story, and if Q reaches the heights of his past, TDE's spot amongst hyper-competitive rap labels can change overnight. The following questions will ultimately be answered. Can Q reestablish TDE's grip on rap? Is Q still rapping at peak form? So I will try and answer those 2 questions. I mean, this is my opinion, but I am a music writer, a music connoisseur, if you will, as well. Can Q reestablish TDE's grip on rap? Right away, I'm going to say the answer is no. However, is Q still rapping at peak form? I would say yes. He's capable of rapping his ass off, but I don't think Q also wants to be that guy, right? Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken a 5-year hiatus. I think from what I personally get out of the project and listening to his like introspective thoughts, he kind of wants to, chill and deal with his family life for the majority of it. He's like a reluctant star, and he's always been that way, right? So I don't think he wants to be this like divine light or guiding light for TDE necessarily, even though he is the next biggest star. No matter how things play out, ScHoolboy Q remains a very talented rapper, a star that has the perfect mix of down-to-earth dude and high school lunchroom funny. And Q is funny. He's easy to cheer for. He's very likable. He's very charismatic. That's why he's the next star on TDE. Because Kendrick is sort of the serious poet. ScHoolboy Q is that charismatic ass dude. Blue Lips releases 10 years after Q's debut album, Oxymoron, and he's come a long way in the last decade, both as an artist and as a person adjusting to stardom. As it stands, ScHoolboy Q has never seemed happier and looser, and if the songs he shared from Blue Lips are any indication, he just might rise to the occasion yet again. And he played his album for Jay-Z. So yeah, there is an amount of pressure there, realistically, right? So again, I think the album is good, but it's not great, right? It is A tier amongst his overall discography, but it's not touching career highs. which if that's the expectation, then that's kind of setting him up for failure in a way. At least that's my overall opinion. So let me see if I can pull up some thoughts. Okay. Okay. So basically I said on this forum that, yeah, it just seemed like Q needed a break from music, which, I mean, you know, the death of Mac Miller did affect him, right? He talks about that on Blue Slides. So it makes sense he kind of took a break from music during like that Crash Talk era, right? But the question I raise is, can he reach the highs of Blank Face again? Right? So me personally, I do find that at the very least, this music that we are getting from Q now, currently, is a step in the right direction. Because if he's ever going to reach those highs, he has to release a project like this, right? This is kind of like, I hate to say it, man, this is kind of the minimum for me of where Q should be at this stage of his career, right? It's like, you know, like, I'm trying to think of a comparable album. You know what I mean? Like, okay, no, I guess those two albums aren't necessarily well, kind of. So I was going to compare Blue Lips to Recovery, which is a strange comparison, I know. But Recovery, in a lot of ways, was a comeback album. I mean, Relapse was a comeback album, but that was a very strange comeback, right? And I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but did Crash Talk come after the death of Mac Miller? Crash Talk album. It's the 5th studio album, 2019. Because he scrapped an album before. He was going to do another album and scrapped it. And that was the album after Blank Face. Right? And that was 3 years after Blank Face. So, yeah, he delayed the album originally scheduled following the death of his friend and collaborator, Mac Miller. Right, so the album came afterwards. So it makes sense. He wasn't putting out his best work, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that album was bad. Let's be honest about it. I was going to say it's mid, but mid is even generous for it. Like, if you ask, like, it seemed like it got some, like, critical praise, but if you ask any rap fan, they're going to be like, nah, Crash Talk wasn't good. And I remember trying to give it a chance, and I'm like, yeah, it's boring. It's not what I want from ScHoolboy Q. This, again, Blue Lips has moments on it where I'm like, yeah, it's great. You know, Thank God for Me is a moment. Blue Slides, which is, you know, introspective and kind of a turn, is good. You know who I wanted as a feature on this project, and I think ScHoolboy should collaborate with, even though I don't think they have done a collaboration, is Danny Brown. Because I see ScHoolboy Q and Danny Brown as kind of spiritually similar. Right? So Freddie Gibbs is on here, and that makes sense. I mean, they're both, you know, kind of gangster rappers. And Danny's not as gangster, but Danny has that humor to him. He also has that side of maturity to him. Right? So let me see if I can, Danny Brown and ScHoolboy Q. Okay, they did a YouTube video together. Flight Confirmation. And it's on an Alchemist beat. And then I also heard, right, because I played Blue Lips, and then on my Spotify came a track produced by The Alchemist. And I'm like, why the fuck is an Alchemist on this project? Am I wrong? Alchemist and Blue Lips. Let's see. Oh, Alchemist is on this project. Wait, what did he produce? Because the Lucy was way better than Lost Times. Okay, that makes sense. I think Alchemist should have done more beats on this. Because this was one of the better tracks, for sure. I mean, the production was good. It was very good. But, I mean, Alchemist is a good collaborator. And I think Alchemist could have pulled the best out of Q. As we've seen with Lost Times. Right? Not to say that Thank God for Me goes insane. I think I liked the beat on Foe. Back in Love was interesting too. Yeah. Musicians. Yeah. I feel like Alchemist could have been more on this project. So, yeah. I mean, those are like my overall thoughts on... oh, yeah. So there was another article here I wanted to pull up. So, ScHoolboy Q says, making of Blue Lips was a 5-year process. Which, to me, this is kind of crazy. And this is an article by Hip Hop DX, written by Will Shube. Okay, ScHoolboy Q has revealed that he spent nearly the entire time since his last album working on his celebrated 6th LP, Blue Lips. I don't know if I entirely believe this. In an interview with Back on Fig, and that's a reference to Figueroa, the LA street, and, you know, obviously ScHoolboy Q is gang affiliated with the Hoover Crips, that aired on Saturday, March 2nd, the TDE rapper shared some insight to the creation process of his new album. I knew where I was going with it in 2019. Most of these songs were recorded early, lyrics-wise. I always tell people I'm more of a producer than I am a rapper. That's a very interesting thing to know, because the production on this album is very good, right? And it does have a very like creative production style. And yeah, I mean, you know, that's totally fair. Rock bands do that all the time, where they, you know, cut and copy paste parts that they do to get the overall ultimate performance. You do arrangements. And so what ScHoolboy Q here is really saying is that his lyric style is almost, he's doing composition, where he's arranging his lyrics, right? And he's fitting puzzle pieces, which is totally fair. I get that as a lyric writer, as a former lyricist, as somebody who did lyrics, I would often do that as well. I would try not to repeat lyrics, if I could avoid it. But sometimes you'll have lyrics for a song that would fit a certain type of instrumental. And sometimes you'd be like, oh, maybe I can borrow a bar from this song because maybe this will fit here and there, and you know. And so that really just shows that he's thinking musically. So that, I'm not knocking him for that, for sure. ScHoolboy also explains that he can rap as soon as he hears a beat, noting that he cracks as soon as he gets going. Despite his ability to get cooking lyrically, as soon as he hits record, it still took him a while to get Blue Lips to the album that exists now. He had a concept outlined from the beginning, but executing it was a different story. I explained everything, and we took literally almost 5 years, ScHoolboy said with a laugh. That's just how I work. So wait, is that on ScHoolboy or is that on TDE? Right? So maybe I was wrong about saying how, like, right? Because I brought Kendrick into it and to the arrangement of To Pimp a Butterfly, which is meticulous, right? So it sounded like ScHoolboy kind of wanted to do something similar with this project, and TDE took 5 years to do that. Again, there are issues with TDE that do need to be addressed. Why SZA's album took so long, right? The Collard Green rapper is also explained that he's also recording, even if he's not consistently dropping new music. So that means there's still music that we haven't heard, right? I got more songs than Pac, for sure. If I'm being honest, I recycle a lot of lyrics. I have a lot of songs, but I take words from other songs. So this is interesting, right? So I am kind of questioning TDE's leadership here, Because if Q has all this material, if he has all this back catalog, why did we have to wait 5 years for an album? I understand you want to release the best product available, but to me, this isn't it. This isn't the best Schoolboy can do. It's close. It's getting there. It's approaching it, right? But he's on his 6th project, right? So, like, we need another blank face level project because he has that in him. ScHoolboy Q spent most of his days surrounding the release of his latest project, answering fans' questions about his discography, and shared some album thoughts on X, formerly known as Twitter. One user asked him which song on the album was the hardest to make, and he received the answer with no hesitation: Blue Slides. Right? Which, of course, is a tribute to his late friend and collaborator, Mac Miller, who released Blue Slide Park in 2011. On it, Schoolboy raps, "Lost a homeboy to the drugs, man. I ain't trying to go backwards. But I realized that shirt hurts and think, was it worth it? Man, I gotta shake this shit. Wake up and move with a purpose." Though fans are immensely satisfied with Blue Lips, it seems it's all they'll be getting from the MC for a while. And Schoolboy says he doesn't plan on releasing a deluxe version, which is good because, as Schoolboy notes here, it's bullshit that the labels push these deluxe versions of albums to get more streams. So I will say at least TDE isn't forcing him to do that, right? So good on TDE for not, doing that to him. So yeah, I mean, he has music, but I mean, at this point, Schoolboy could probably release a mixtape, right? Or hell, he could probably release a side project with Alchemist, just like Action Bronson, and have it be really dope, right? So those are my thoughts on Blue Lips. I was going to say Blue Slides. Blue Slides, highlight of that project. So we are 30 minutes in. And I'm just going to check the camera real quick just to make sure we're still recording. Okay. And we're good. We are good. So, okay. So, there is one other thing actually I did want to touch about. It is old news at this point, but I did want to react to the reaction to Anthony Fantano's Vultures review, where he more or less didn't give a review, right? So, I mean, that is the criticism, because he was so over Kanye that he was just like, yeah, this is undoubtedly Kanye's worst project. And then people are like, separate the art from the artist when, he's putting anti-Semitism in the music. And it's like, actually, no, man, I can't. And Fantano, the needle drop, makes a great point where he talks about how he refers to his wife as just a reference. So Kanye basically is admitting that his wife to him, his wife, the person he married, is a prop to him, which, as Fantano points out correctly, is one of the most dehumanizing things he can do and or say, right? So, I mean, I'm 100% in agreement with Fantano. I don't get you know what it is? I mean, there are obviously the Kanye stans, right? But I think a lot of people don't like Anthony Fantano. They don't like the needle drop because he's an internet personality, celebrity, whatever. And a lot of them feel, like, I don't know, like I was just a dude with an opinion and blew up. Like anybody could do that. Well, you didn't, right? So there is something about the way Anthony Fantano structures video reviews that is appealing, right? And I know a lot of people don't agree with this take, but to me, he was the internet generation's Pitchfork, right? Look what happened to Pitchfork, right? Pitchfork is now, thanks to corporate ownership, consolidated under GQ. And now the Pitchfork employees, the music writers, and this is music related, can't freelance if they have in the past worked part-time for Pitchfork. There is like some kind of weird non-compete clause or something. So they are now barred from doing any freelance work from their former employer, which is insane. I mean, there already weren't that many outlets that, you know, music writers were able to write for. Arts and entertainment journalism is, I mean, journalism in general is in a state of disarray. Arts and entertainment journalism is in a huge dumpster fire right now. And the idea that we're losing Pitchfork. Sure, Pitchfork is is going to still be around, but to what end? Vice is gone. Does anybody remember Noisy? Noisy was great. Noisy was awesome. I was looking forward to one day writing for Noisy. Right when I kind of got my toes on the door, that's when that publication fell apart. And then Vice as a whole now is bankrupt, right? So it's frustrating. Why'd I bring this? Oh, Anthony Fantano and the Vultures review to come back full circle. Yeah, I think he was totally fair with the criticism. People saying, oh, like, just look at the music, bro. Get your head out of your ass, right? The music is bad. The music has been bad since Life of Pablo, if we're keeping it 100. If we're keeping it a buck, if we're keeping it 100, the music has been bad since Life of Pablo. Because at Life of Pablo, that's when you could see his mental health starting to deteriorate. Because that album was chaotic. It was a mess, right? Now, there were good things about Life of Pablo. He hadn't completely devolved, right? But we were starting to see the beginning of the unraveling, right? Just the way that album was structured was odd, right? But no, man, he's an artist, man. Well, we fucked around and found out, didn't we? Then you get projects, you know, like Donda, Jesus is King, Donda 2, and I mean, I don't even remember the rest of Kanye's discography if I'm being honest. But yeah, I remember those projects. Let's see. Discography. I mean, Donda 2 was like his thing to like sell a product with like audio stems. Yeah, I mean, most of his collaborative albums too were bad. Jesus King was bad. Donda was bad. Donda 2 demo album. Via Stem Player, yep. These were bad. Let's see. Donda went platinum? I'm surprised. Because Jesus is King only went gold. Okay. Yeah. Well. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I guess I'll call it a day, right? There isn't that much to say. Yeah. I knew that would rhyme. I didn't know how it would sound, but I knew that would rhyme. All right. Well, I am going to wrap it up. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If you liked this episode, you know, I am open to feedback. Please give comments. Again, I'd like to know what I could change. you know, I am hoping to one day do interviews here. I will have to figure out 2-person lighting setup. It is a lot easier to do this with a single camera and a single light, but I am also going to repair my my soundboard. That if you've listened to the episode with Tyler, you would know that I have issues with the soundboard moving by itself. So I am looking forward to having a complete soundboard that is totally reliable. Sorry for being tangential, I guess. Yeah, let me know if you like this episode. Comment, like, and subscribe to the video. It does help the algorithm. It does help push out the content. Really want to try to, you know, hopefully grow this year. Particularly on YouTube. I am doing other types of content, but for now, YouTube will probably be the home of the podcast. Especially if we're doing it video format. So it is what it is. Anyways, thank you for taking the time to listen. This has been the Freeze Podcast, the podcast about hip hop chatter.
The Freeze.
Podcast.
The Freeze.
Podcast.
The Freeze.